from NFL owners meetings in Minneapolis. And Jordan Reed of ESPN joins us now. Jordan, I'm not sure how much you're paying attention to everything happening. I just imagine you're just locked up in a room or a cave somewhere trying to recover from the NFL draft process as the dust has settled at this point. Have you emerged? What is the day-to-day like for you? And thank you for being here.
Hey, yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. I usually take the late month of May off into early June. A lot of fishing, a lot of grilling in the backyard as well, just trying to recharge the battery from a long 10 to 11 months of tending to the NFL draft. So still recharging the battery, but still paying very close attention to the NFL news and college football news that's happening around the country.
Well, then we especially appreciate you taking some time in your much-needed time off. I imagine it was a whirlwind leading up and right after, Jordan. I mean, how long did it take you at this point, we're a few weeks removed, to kind of really wrap your head around what happened, especially with the fall of Shedeur Sanders on draft night and any other shockers that might have taken place?
Yeah, there's always a lot of unexpected things that happen during the draft. And, I mean, it started off with a lot of fireworks with the Travis Hunter trade, Jacksonville coming up to number 2 overall, and Cleveland trading back and selecting Mason Graham. So we got off to a really, really good start at the beginning of the draft. And then, you know, the Shedeur Sanders things that happened, which was completely unexpected. Nobody seen him falling to the 5th round. I don't think anybody would have predicted that. But those were pretty much the main things that happened during the draft. And, I mean, there's always some small things that happen here and there that you kind of expect, but those were 2 things that were really unexpected.
Have you come to a consensus on the Titans' overall draft class, obviously spearheaded by Cam Ward with the number 1 pick?
I thought they did a good job, honestly. And, you know, you can't address every single need in the draft, but I thought they hit some really good points that they needed. Obviously, quarterback was a big one. Cam Ward was a top 10 player for me throughout the pre-draft process. I thought it was a no-brainer pick for Tennessee to pick him at the top of the draft. Then defensive line, I thought, was another area that they could look to address. Femi Oladejo, who was somebody that I really fell in love with, really post-Senior Bowl. I thought he did a really good job during the pre-draft process of really distancing himself from some other day 2 guys in the class. And then they hit receiver twice. I thought they did a good job of double dipping and getting 2 good players in Dyke from Florida and then Ayamoner from Stanford. I think both of those guys have a chance to be contributors, especially for a Tennessee team that needs some pass catchers for Cam Ward right away. Well,
and I do want to ask you about Femi Oladejo and just what his role could look like in terms of what will be asked of him this season. But first, on Cam Ward, Jordan, it's hard. Every rookie quarterback is in a different situation, typically not a very good one if you're the number 1 overall pick. Do you have any sort of method of setting up parameters in your head in terms of how to judge success for a quarterback in his rookie year? Like, what is the context necessary around Cam Ward's rookie season for us to walk away saying, okay, we've got something here in Tennessee? What are your expectations of him in that regard?
Well, it's always tough, especially when you're talking about a rookie quarterback. I think C.J. Stroud and Jaden Daniels ruined it for all the guys that are coming after them just because they came in and they played so well. But I think for Cam, you just want to see some type of progress in the system as the season goes along. Of course, there's going to be some rough patches along the way, but you want to see the continued growth with him, limiting the turnovers, then also just making smart decisions, especially for a quarterback that was very opportunistic and was a bit of a roller coaster as far as some of the decision making that he had within games. So you want to see him still being a risk taker, but being selective with those risks, and then just not playing hesitant. I think that's something that you always look for in quarterbacks, just how much of a daredevil that they are, but also really containing some of those moments, but staying accurate, being poised, and then also just being a leader. I think that's something that they're looking for Cam in year 1.
Brian Callahan has talked about studying some components of the Miami offense that brought him some success as he kind of tries to mold the 2025 Titans around his rookie quarterback. Is there anything specific that you saw Miami doing with Cam Ward that really put him in a position to succeed that you wouldn't mind seeing the Titans maybe adopt a little bit this coming season?
I think just accepting who he is, honestly. And what I mean by that is, and I wrote this in the scouting report, there's going to be some games of where you're saying, no, good job with some of the plays that he makes. So there's going to be a lot of thrilling throws that he does have, but he has to be more selective when he picks and chooses those spots of when to take those risks. But I always love those types of quarterbacks. That's what we see with, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson to an extent. as well. Just those playmaking abilities, but you have to understand for every 9 or 10 throws that they have that are impressive, there's going to be 1 or 2 throws that leave you scratching your head. That's just the life of a playmaker. But I always would love to have a quarterback as opposed to the inverse type of those types of quarterbacks.
Jordan Reed of ESPN, our guest, at Jordan_Reed on Twitter. Now, you mentioned Femi Oladejo as a prospect that you said separated himself in the pre-draft process. Obviously, the traits are there. They jump off the page as Titans rookies have been on the field for rookie minicamp. But it feels like the consensus around Oladejo, Jordan, is as a raw prospect as an edge rusher, right? Didn't start playing the position until a few games into his final year at UCLA. But that's a guy that it's not that he's going to have to kind of climb his way up the depth chart. He's kind of already there, Jordan, with the lack of options the Titans have at pass rusher. Is Femi Oladejo the type of player that you would like to see worked in a little bit more? Because he's going into a situation where they're going to need him on day one.
Yeah, I think so. And the good thing about being a team that's essentially going through a rebuild is that you want to see exactly what you have on the roster, especially those day 1, day 2 players. You want to get them out there as long as they're ready as early as possible, just because you want to see exactly what you have in them. And for a player like Femi that's only been playing the position for such a limited or a handful of games, experience is king for him, just because he hasn't had a lot of exposure to actually playing off of the edge. And he's had some spotlight highlight-worthy moments during his time at UCLA, but you want to see that continued growth. And the only way that he's going to really ascend and continue on that growth pattern is if he's getting those reps. So, for the Titans, the depth chart off of the edge isn't great, but the great thing for Femi is that he's going to get a lot of reps at that outside linebacker or defensive end spot, wherever they choose to play him.
The 2 wide receiver picks, both in the 4th round, Shamir DK and Elikayo Manor, they're going to have to kind of grow up quick within this offense, Jordan, assuming the Titans don't make any notable moves at the wide receiver spot. What are the notable differences between the two in terms of what they can bring to the table that's different in their rookie year?
Well, DK is more of your down the field stretcher, about 6'1", 195 pounds, and the speed really jumps off on tape about him. He's going to be that guy that really can open up everything underneath. And when Cam Ward does want to take those risks down the field, he definitely is going to be that player that he's pushing the ball down the field too. So I think if he wants to carve out a role really early on for himself, it's probably going to have to be as that field or that roof stretcher initially early on. But Yaminer is more of your underneath, intermediate type of player who's capable of going deep, but really good range, a really good route runner as well, a really young player too as well, which is something that I really like that the Titans really addressed, was that just the youth that they needed. But getting 2 pass catchers, I love that they double dipped. And like you mentioned, both of those guys are going to have to grow up pretty quickly, just because outside of Calvin Ridley, the wide receiver depth chart is not great for the Titans.
Well, and that includes now Xavier Restrepo, or at least he's going to try to battle his way onto that depth chart. Jordan, the UDFA out of Miami. Titans fans have kind of attached themselves to him as Cam Ward obviously glows about his former teammate, and we understand how productive he was at Miami and the 40 time holding him back. Where did you ultimately fall on Xavier Restrepo, kind of factoring in the 40 at his pro day with the crazy production he had at Miami?
I thought he was a day 3 prospect. I thought he probably would end up going prior to the 4.840. Unfortunately for him, at his pro day, I thought he probably would end up in the 5th or the 6th round if I had to guess where he did end up going if he elected not to run at the pro day. But unfortunately, he did have a slow time at the pro day, and that's why he ended up going undrafted. But there's just something about a receiver being able to create separation. Even though he's not an overly big guy, I think he's going to have to make a living in the slot, which is something that the Titans don't really have on the roster right now. They don't have somebody that can live in the slot and really dominate those underneath touches. But the great thing for him is that he already has rapport and he already has chemistry with Cam Ward, which is why I think he was so adamant about signing with Tennessee and really finding that landing spot, staying with his quarterback.
Jordan Reed of ESPN with us on 104.5 The Zone. Jordan, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate you spending it with us, especially in your lull post-draft. It's well-deserved, and looking forward to seeing you pick back up. College football coming up in a few months. Have you started on those 2026 mock drafts yet, or are you going to allow yourself to get your feet under you for the college football season, where I know you'll be doing some stuff with ESPN Radio?
Yeah, so I started watching 2026 guys all the way back in February while I'm out on the pro day circuit, and I had my first 2026 mock draft come out about 2 or 3 weeks ago, up on ESPN Plus. So about 100 guys watched already. But like I said, I'm going to recharge the battery now and come back and start watching. Probably about 200 or 300 more guys coming to the season, so I'll be ready to go.
Real quick, who's the guy you're most excited to follow throughout the course of this upcoming college football season in terms of what his draft prospects will look like by season's end?
There's honestly a lot, but I'm really intrigued by the quarterback class. I think it's much better than what we saw this past season, or I should say it's much deeper. But there's a lot of, intrigue with this year's class coming up. Arch Manning of Texas is an obvious one. Lenore Sellers of South Carolina, Garrett Nussmeier of Penn State, then also Drew Aller of Penn State. But one guy I had going number one overall in my most recent mock draft of 2026 was Cade Klubnik out of Clemson. So there's a lot of names that are really intriguing at the top of the draft class with this upcoming quarterback class.
Jordan Reed of ESPN has been our guest. Jordan, appreciate the time, man, and we'll do it again soon.
Thank you as always.
Yes, sir. At Jordan_Reed on Twitter, where you can find him. You want to jump on those 2026 mock drafts. He's got him out there for you. Appreciate the time as always.